Welcome to the deep dive. Sometimes you find a book that just, well, it feels really foundational. Today, we're looking closely at some excerpts from How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. Adele Faber and Elaine Mazlish.
Yes, a classic.
Definitely. Came out first in 1980, revised in 2012. That tells you something about its staying power.
It really does. And since you shared these parts with us, our aim today isn't just, summarizing another parenting book.
Right.
We want to pull out the really practical, usable communication stuff from these specific excerpts. Think of it like a targeted guide.
A shortcut, maybe.
Yeah, a shortcut to connect better with kids, hopefully have less frustration, more, positive back and forth.
Exactly. Practical insights, that's the goal. Not getting bogged down in theory. And the main idea here seems pretty powerful, doesn't it?
Which is?
That clear, compassionate communication. It's not just about getting kids to cooperate.
No, it's deeper.
Yeah, it's about building a stronger connection, really getting their emotions and responding to them, but still, keeping boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we start digging into these big ideas?
Well, I think the absolute cornerstone, something the authors keep coming back to, is empathy.
Empathy, okay.
They really stress how important it is to, acknowledge and validate how a child feels. Even the tricky feelings, the ones that seem kind of unreasonable to us. What stood out to you there?
Well, they had this great example, really relatable, about a kid just getting so mad trying to tie their shoes.
No, I remember that one.
Instead of jumping in or losing patience, they suggest saying something like, "Wow, I see you're really frustrated. Learning to tie shoes is tough."
Simple, right. But
Yeah.
what's the real effect of saying that?
What's really fascinating, and it kind of ties into basic attachment stuff,
Okay.
is how just acknowledging it, that simple step, can completely change things for the child.
How so?
Well, by validating that frustration, you're basically saying, look, I see you're struggling, and yeah, it's okay to feel that way.
Right. Makes sense.
And that helps them feel really understood, secure in that understanding. And weirdly, that often makes them more willing to try again or, accept help. It's like you're building that trust foundation first.
That makes a lot of sense. It shifts it, doesn't it? From the kid feeling maybe dumb or alone to feeling like someone gets it. Okay, another big thing they mention. Avoiding the lecture trap. Oh boy. Guilty.
Huh. I think we all are sometimes.
So why do those long explanations just fall flat so often?
Yeah, and if you think about just the dynamics, right? Lectures often they fall flat. It's just one-way traffic, information-wise. Kids kind of tune out, or maybe they feel judged.
Right, we're defensive.
Exactly, defensive, especially with a long moral lesson. It can even feel, a bit disrespectful of their ability to figure things out themselves.
And the alternative they suggest is simple, direct language.
Yep, they use the messy room example. Instead of the big speech on responsibility, just, your room isn't clean, what should we do about it? Puts it back on them, yeah.
Precisely. It flips a switch in their head.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the deal, and I guess I need to help figure this out.
Right.
It respects that they can problem solve rather than just telling them the answer, which, like you said, can just make them dig their heels in.
Okay, another principle that really caught my eye was active listening. Sounds simple, but it seems like it's way more than just hearing words.
Oh, it absolutely is. Active listening, really, it's about genuinely focusing on where the child's coming from,
Yeah.
trying to get the feeling behind the words,
Uh-huh.
and then responding thoughtfully, giving them your full attention, body language too. Some people call it reflective listening. It's incredibly powerful for building that connection.
They use that example of the kid who wasn't invited to a party, feeling left out. And the parent says, sounds like you're feeling left out. That must be really hard. Again, it's that validation, but it also shows you're trying to understand their world. How does that help long term?
Well, if we think about trust again, active listening is just fundamental. When kids feel like they're consistently heard, really heard and understood, they're way more likely to open up later, even with tough stuff, vulnerable feelings.
Okay.
And it usually helps calm things down too, right? Because they feel acknowledged, not just shut down.
Now, here's one I find really interesting in these excerpts. Offering choices instead of just commands. Seems like a small change, but maybe a big impact.
What's so smart about offering choices is how it plugs right into that basic human need kids have for some control, some autonomy.
Oh, right.
It's like a fundamental psychological thing. Even if you're setting the main boundary, giving them some say within it can seriously cut down resistance, makes them feel more responsible too.
They give that simple classic example, getting dressed. red jacket or blue one today. The end result's the same jacket on, but they get a choice.
Exactly. And by giving that choice, you're letting them participate. They feel empowered.
Right.
And that builds their decision-making muscles, makes them more bought in to whatever happens. It's subtle, but yeah, really effective for getting cooperation.
Okay, and the last big principle here, problem solving together. This seems like it goes even further than just offering choices, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah. Problem solving together means you're actively bringing the child into the whole process, figuring out the challenge, brainstorming solutions.
So it's not just the parent laying down the law.
Exactly. It becomes more of a team effort.
They mentioned dealing with siblings fighting and suggesting, like, okay, guys, what do you think we can do to solve this? How does actually involving them like that help them grow?
Well, thinking about their development, cognitively, socially, getting them involved in solving problems sharpens their critical thinking. Plus, they feel ownership over the solution they helped create, right?
Ownership. That makes sense.
They weren't just told what to do, they were part of figuring it out. So they're much more likely to actually stick to whatever you all decide.
Okay, so those are some really, really insightful principles underneath it all. Now let's get into some of the specific, like, how-to communication strategies the book talks about. First up, more on validating emotions. We touched on it, but why is it so critical, especially with those negative emotions?
Well, here's the thing. When a kid's feelings get dismissed, maybe even made fun of, those feelings don't just disappear, poof, gone.
Right.
Instead, the child might feel, misunderstood, alone, or even ashamed of feeling that way. So by validating their feelings, anger, sadness, whatever, you make it safe for them.
Safe to feel it.
Exactly. Safe to feel it, process it, and maybe learn healthier ways to deal with it down the road.
And that broken toy example, saying, oh man, I see you're really sad about your toy. It's tough to lose something you like. That really shows it. It's not about fixing it right away or saying it's just a toy. It's just acknowledging the feeling is real.
Precisely. You show empathy, you build connection, and often that validation first actually makes them more open to comfort or figuring out what to do next. You got to meet them where they are emotionally.
Okay. Another big one. Using I messages instead of, blaming statements. That seems like a really important shift in how we talk.
Oh, it's huge because blaming statements like you never listen, what happens immediately?
Defensiveness. Walls go up.
Totally. They feel attacked, so they're not really hearing you anyway. But I messages, they shift the focus. It's about your feeling, your experience because of their action. It's kind of like nonviolent communication principles, really. Less defense.
So instead of you never listen, it's more like, I feel frustrated when I'm talking and I don't feel heard. What's the basic difference in how that lands?
The difference is you're talking about your inside world. You're not directly attacking them.
Gotcha.
So it lowers the chance of that defensive kickback. And it lets them actually think about, oh, how did my action affect them? Fosters a bit more empathy and responsibility, hopefully.
They also talk about acknowledging and redirecting negative behavior. So looking past what they're doing to the why.
Exactly. So instead of just reacting to the behavior you don't like, you try to first acknowledge the feeling or maybe the need that's driving it, and then gently guide them to a better way to express it or meet that need.
So like if a kid's yelling, instead of just yelling back or time out,
right,
you might say something like, wow, I hear you're really upset right now. Let's try talking about it calmly. Is that the idea?
Precisely. You validate the feeling the upset is real, but you also set a clear boundary. Yelling's not okay, and you offer a better option, talking calmly. It helps them connect feelings to better actions.
Setting limits, obviously, that's huge. And the book says do it firmly, but kindly. How do you actually do that? Firm and kind seem different.
The trick is in the clarity and the respect. Kids need limits. It makes them feel secure, gives structure. Firmness just means being clear, consistent, holding the line reliably. Kindness means how you communicate that limit respectfully, acknowledging their feelings about it.
So not being wishy-washy, but not being harsh either.
Exactly. Avoid being permissive, but keep the tone respectful, understanding.
The bedtime example works well here. It's bedtime now. You can choose to go quietly, or I can help you get settled. It states the fact, but offers a choice and support.
Yes. It gives that needed structure, but it also gets that the kid might resist or need help transitioning. That approach tends to cut down on power struggles, gets more cooperation within the boundary you set.
Okay, lastly, they mentioned using humor and playfulness. That sounds like a much nicer way to deal with things sometimes.
Oh, humor is such a valuable tool, isn't it? It can just lighten the whole mood, create a more positive vibe.
Definitely.
And playfulness can make boring or tough tasks feel more like a game, less like a chore, which naturally means less resistance, more cooperation.
Like making cleaning the room a race against the clock or something.
Exactly. It changes it from this dreaded task into something, well, potentially fun.
But less of a battle.
Way less of a battle. Taps into their natural desire to play.
Okay, so we've walked through these core ideas and specific strategies. If people actually start using these techniques, what are the real-world benefits? For the parents, for the kids?
Well, for the parents or caregivers, the excerpts really suggest better communication overall is a huge win. Using these strategies means you're more likely to actually be heard, and you'll probably understand your kids better too, their inner world.
Which leads to less fighting.
Yeah, likely less conflict because you're getting at the root causes, not just reacting to the surface stuff. And hopefully more cooperation because the kids feel respected and involved.
And for the kids themselves, how does this kind of communication help them?
Oh, huge benefits for their emotional intelligence. Huge.
How so?
When their feelings get validated, when they learn to express themselves better, they get better at understanding and managing their own emotions, identifying them, handling them. That often leads to better behavior too because they feel heard, less need to act out. And just fundamentally, it builds stronger relationships, trust, mutual respect. That's massive for their development.
It really drives home that it's not just about getting kids to obey now. It's about nurturing them, building a lasting, healthy connection. So this book, it's been around, it's highly recommended. Why do you think it has such staying power?
I think what makes How to Talk so timeless, so effective, is that it's based on really fundamental truths about, well, human communication and child psychology.
Not just trends.
Exactly, not just the latest fad. Faber and Mazlish drew on tons of experience, real wisdom, and the book is packed with relatable examples, stuff that actually happens in families.
Makes it easy to see how to apply it.
Yes, and it connects to solid psychological ideas like, fostering autonomy, building self-esteem, helping kids regulate emotions.
So it's practical, not just theory. And it gives parents real alternatives to just, say, punishment or bribes, which often backfire long-term, don't they?
They really can damage the relationship. This book shifts the focus entirely. It's about building respect, empathy.
Right.
It empowers parents to guide effectively, but it also gives kids crucial life skills, how to express yourself, solve problems, manage feelings. It helps create a more collaborative, understanding family vibe.
So wrapping up this deep dive,
Yeah.
What's the absolute core message you think we should take away from these excerpts?
I think the main takeaway is just how practical and powerful these tools are for building stronger, healthier relationships with kids. Simple as that, really. It just highlights how transformative empathy can be, how vital active listening is, and how much clear, respectful talk matters day to day.
And maybe for everyone listening, a final thought could be just pick one or two things we talked about, something that really clicks for you,
Yeah.
and just wonder, how could trying even that small shift change your interactions? How could it maybe strengthen those connections with the kids in your life? Which strategy feels like one you could actually try out this week? Definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.